Time for our science segment next. Cosmonauts on the International Space Station were forced to briefly lock down a segment of the orbiting lab after finding an unusual odor. It was coming from a Russian cargo spacecraft that had docked earlier that day. NASA still doesn't know what caused the smell. Hopefully we can find out more about this with Julia Seeger. Julia, walk us through what exactly happened here.
So on November 21st, the Russian cargo ship Progress took off from the Russian launch base at Baikonur, which is located in Siberia. Aboard, there was more propellant, extra food, extra supplies and equipment for the International Space Station. And 2 days later, it was able to successfully dock to the ISS. Now, what happened is that when the astronauts actually opened the cargo hatch, they all indeed smelled that odor that they all describe as being resembling that of an aerosol. And they also witnessed small little droplets. And so what they did is that immediately they decided to close off the airlock, temporarily close off all of that section of the ISS, and they activated the air scrubbing equipment. Now, that was a couple of days ago. What we now know is that NASA actually took this very seriously and was actually very concerned because what they thought is that it could have been a substance called hydrazine. It smells like ammonia. It's used as a propellant in Progress, and it's actually very toxic for humans. So very quickly, it can create catastrophic damage to the respiratory and nervous system, but also it can trigger liver and kidney failures. And so, fortunately, this scenario was quickly ruled out. NASA, the teams that are in Houston, were able to remotely check the air quality inside of the ISS, and they figured out that everything was actually normal. Today, they still don't know what it is. It could have been one of two things. They say it could have been a leak of the Coolidge system, but it could have also been what we call a phenomenon called outgassing. That's when you take a terrestrial object and you bring it to Earth. The gas that's inside of that material can actually leak out. So it's one of two things, but at the same time, they really still don't know what it is and where it came from.
But it's not toxic.
But it's not toxic because the astronauts are doing well.
Okay, let's talk about something else because the ISS is faced with yet another challenge. This is related to the wear and tear of the Russian section.
Exactly. So for years, we've been spotting more and more cracks and more leaks within the entire International Space Station. But more specifically, there's a lot of concern with the Russian section. So as you know, the ISS is an assemblage of different modules that were put together from different countries, and that assemblage started in 1998, so it dates back to 1998. Now, every module, as I said, comes from different countries, so now you have different sections. So as you can see here, you have the American section, the Russian section, the Japanese section, and the Russian section that you see here is actually in brown. And there's a lot of worrying about this section because 90% of the in-flight system of that Russian section are considered to be obsolete or outdated. And there's a leak, actually, a micro leak that was identified in the Zvezda module here, and that's why regularly the Russian section is actually completely sealed off from the rest of the International Station. Actually, Roscosmos and NASA don't agree on how important and how grave the situation is compared to about that micro leak. So, as you know, the International Space Station is to be deorbited by 2031, but that situation, this tear and this wear and tear, it could actually precipitate the departure of the Russians from the International Space Station. They said they could have even leave as of 2025, just in a couple of months. And they've actually started creating their very own space station. It's a very sad situation because, as you know, the International Space Station is really the embodiment of international cooperation in space. What we could see in a couple of years is, essentially space stations of different countries, but no international space station anymore.
Now, another problem, Julia, is threatening the International Space Station. That's astronauts on board had to make an avoidance maneuver for the second time in a week.
That's right. For the second time in a week, they were able to dodge space debris. Now, ironically, they were able to do so thanks to a Russian cargo docked on the ISS. They were able to restart that Russian cargo and to shift the station 500 meters and avoid a fragment of satellite. And this type of incident, it usually happens once every 2 years. This time it was twice in a week. And that just shows that it's proof that the lower Earth orbit is now very much cluttered with satellites by space debris. There are about 10,200 active satellites over the Earth. More than 6,000 actually are of the Starlink constellation. And all of that, because it's not always deorbited, it creates a lot of debris. And more, the International Space Station has to make these avoidance maneuvers to avoid colliding and having an important collision. So as you can see, the International Space Station, there's more and more worrying about its future because of the space debris, but also because of the wear and tear of the equipment.
Julia, thank you very much for that. Julia Seeger there.